Well, hello there. Welcome to our Preamble episode of Decoding the Parables of Jesus. Before we dive deep into the teachings of Jesus, I thought it would be great to have a roadmap for our journey. After all, understanding the parables isn't about reading stories, it's about unlocking the wisdom hidden within them. This season, we'll explore 40 of Jesus' parables, studying each one briefly. Yes, I said 40 parables. It's quite a long journey, but don't worry, we need this journey, and by the end, we will have a deeper understanding and appreciation of the most profound teachings of Jesus. So then, what exactly is a parable? When I was younger, I was told that a parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. That definition is simple, but powerful. The dictionary defines a parable as a short, fictitious story that illustrates a moral attitude or a religious principle. The word parable appears both in the Old and New Testaments, and understanding its meaning gives us foundation for our study. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word for parable is moshor, which refers to a proverb, saying, similitude, or ethical wisdom. It comes from the root word moshal, which carries the idea of intellectual superiority. And yes, there were parables in the Old Testament. Remember when Nathan spoke to King David in a parable to reveal his sin? Or when God instructed Ezekiel to speak a parable in Ezekiel 17, showing the coming judgment and ultimate restoration of Israel? So, Jesus wasn't introducing a new method of teaching. He was using one of the most effective ways to ingrain deep spiritual truths into the hearts and minds of the listeners. In the New Testament, the Greek word for parable is parabole, which refers to a juxtaposition, metaphor, or allegory. It carries the same essence as its Old Testament counterpart, an illustrative story designed to convey profound spiritual truth. So, how do we study parables then? To properly understand and interpret Jesus' parables, we must apply certain fundamental principles. Here are 6 important rules we will follow throughout this series, and we will reiterate them. Firstly, parables are not truth, but illustrations of spiritual truth. Second, parables should not be used to establish doctrines. Jesus' parables were meant to illustrate truths, not to create new doctrines. For instance, when Jesus spoke about 3 measures of meal and leaven, he wasn't teaching us the only correct way to bake. And when he spoke about wedding garments, he wasn't giving us a new dress code for our wedding ceremonies. Third, analyze only as far as necessary to grasp Jesus' intended message. It's easy to get caught up in every little detail, but we must resist the urge to read our own ideas into the text. Instead, we should focus on what Jesus intended to teach. Fourth, always consider the context in which the parable was given. Who was Jesus talking to? Why was he addressing them in such a manner? Understanding the setting and the audience helps us draw the right interpretation of the parable. Fifth, consider the cultural and historical background. Jesus often used agricultural, social, and political illustrations, familiar to his audience. To truly grasp his message, we need to understand the customs, practices, and traditions of that time. Sixth, let Scripture interpret Scripture. Our first source of interpretation should always be the Bible itself, especially when Jesus explains what the parable means. If he gives an explanation, we should always take that as the primary interpretation. To help us better understand the message of Jesus' parables, we have categorized them into 10 groups. This will help us to see the patterns in his teachings and grasp their significance more clearly. So here are the 10 categories. Firstly, love and mercy. Stories that reveal God's compassion and our call to show love. Secondly, the reception of truth. How different hearts respond to the message of the kingdom. Third, the transformation of character. Parables that tell us to grow spiritually. Fourth, the need for humility, teaching us the importance of a humble heart. Fifth, prayer. Lessons on faith, persistence, and the power of prayer. Sixth, opportunities, warnings and encouragements about how we use what God gives us. 7. True Christianity, what it really means to be a Christian. 8th, awaiting the return, how we should prepare for Christ's second coming. 9th, salvation, understanding God's redemptive plan and how He wishes we should be saved. 10. Justice and judgment, parables about God's righteous judgment. With this structure in place, we are ready to begin our journey. Our first stop, love and mercy. See you there.